welcome to the deep dive. So today we have a mission, and it's really tailored for anyone listening who, anyone who manages a team, teaches a classroom, maybe coaches a sport, or honestly, just cares a little too much.
Yeah, which is, a lot of us.
Right, exactly. We are going to try and cure a very specific, deeply exhausting type of burnout today. We're pulling from this really fascinating stack of educational frameworks.
We are. We're looking at John Hattie's landmark research on achievement, for one.
Yeah, and also this concept of radical realism and something our sources call the Zen Mountain Framework. Because our ultimate goal today is to answer a question that I know for a fact you have asked yourself.
It's a question that sits right at the core of so much, professional and personal exhaustion.
It really does. And it starts with a scenario you've definitely been in. Picture this. It's like 11:30 at night.
Oh, I already know where this is going.
Right. You are exhausted, staring at a glowing screen, desperately rewriting a presentation for, like, a junior team member who is struggling. Or maybe you're agonizing over a custom study guide for a student, or just trying to organize a friend's chaotic life.
Just doing all the heavy lifting.
All of it. Sweating the details. And the next morning, they skim your work, they shrug, they put in zero effort, and they bomb anyway.
Yeah.
And somehow, sitting there in the aftermath, you are the one who feels incredibly guilty. You're thinking, like, oh, I should have pushed harder. I should have done more.
It is such a universal trap. You literally take on the emotional weight of another person's outcome.
Yes.
And when they inevitably fail to engage, you internalize their choice as your own personal or, professional failing.
Exactly.
But what the Zen Mountain Framework offers is a systematic way to dismantle that exact guilt. It provides this tactical shield, basically, to help you find absolute peace in your role.
Which sounds amazing.
It really is. It works by drawing a hard, undeniable boundary between where your responsibility ends and where another person's autonomy actually begins.
Well, I need this shield because I will freely confess to you and everyone listening right now, I am a recovering hero.
It's a tough habit to break.
It is. And our sources specifically call out this dynamic as the hero-teacher trap, or, the hero-manager trap. We have this core problem defined in the research as result ownership. So what is actually happening to our psychology when we get sucked into this?
Well, the hero mentality essentially turns you into what the research identifies as a transmitter.
A transmitter, like a radio tower.
Exactly, like a radio tower.
Oh.
You are the one generating all the energy, doing all the intellectual heavy lifting, right? And you're constantly trying to just transmit your drive, your knowledge, your success directly into the other person.
Right.
But operating this way creates a massive psychological friction called role conflict.
Meaning we are trying to play a part in a play that we weren't actually cast in. Like taking on a role that just isn't ours.
Precisely. You are taking on the emotional toll of trying to control variables that absolutely defy your control.
Wow.
You cannot control a student's systemic background. You can't control a team member's personal apathy or a friend's baseline willingness to try.
But I want to try.
Right, because you are playing the hero. Your ego convinces you that if you just care enough or if you just work late enough into the night, your sheer willpower can somehow override their apathy.
But let me push back on this a bit, because fighting that apathy is practically baked into our culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't the whole narrative of a quote-unquote good teacher
Right.
or a dedicated leader that they do take total uncompromising responsibility for their people's results? Society basically glorifies this.
It completely does.
Like, you watch any movie about a great educator, and it's always this montage of someone working 90 hours a week, sacrificing their marriage, and just dragging their students across the finish line through sheer force of will. And if you aren't doing that, society tells you that you just don't care.
We are so conditioned to view that as the ideal. But if we pull back and look at the actual mechanism of learning and growth, the hero path is an emotional trap that does measurable harm.
Harm? Really?
Yes, because when you act as a transmitter, you are actually stealing their reps.
Stealing their reps, like in a gym.
Exactly like a gym. Taking on the moral failing of another person's apathy destroys your mental health, sure, but it also actively stunts the learner's independence.
Oh, I see.
If you are always the one jumping in to do the heavy lifting, rewriting that presentation at 11:30 at night, they never build the cognitive muscles required to lift the weight themselves.
Wow. That hits hard.
They become entirely dependent on your heroic intervention. And the research clearly shows this paradox, where the harder the educator works to be the hero, the lower the actual independent achievement of the student.
Oh, wow. Okay, that entirely shifts the perspective. It's not just that being the hero is exhausting for me, it's that it is bordering on professional malpractice because I'm enabling their weakness.
Yeah.
But, okay, if I can't be the hero who drags them to success, what is the alternative? Because, I mean, you can't just throw your hands up and stop caring.
Right, you don't stop caring, but you fundamentally change how you care. And this requires a really profound shift in identity, which our sources call the pedagogy of humility.
Humility, because you have to let go of the ego that says you are the savior of the situation.
Precisely. You have to step down from being the, what they call the sage on stage, the performer transmitting all the answers, and become what the research calls a lead learner or an activator.
An activator.
Yeah. And to do this without feeling immense guilt, you really have to master the concept of the locus of control.
Oh, I really want to break down this locus of control for everyone listening, because understanding this line completely changed how I view my own responsibilities.
It is the foundation of the entire Zen Mountain mindset. You have to draw an absolute, just impenetrable line between the internal locus of control and the external locus of control. Your internal locus includes exclusively what you do. That is your pedagogy, your communication, how you design the physical or digital environment, the tools you provide, the clarity of your instructions.
That's that bike I have my hands on.
Exactly. You have 100% control over those elements. The external locus of control is entirely what the other person does.
Right.
That is their effort, their attendance, their focus, and, their ultimate decision to actually engage with the tools you built.
So the guilt we feel, that heavy churning feeling in your stomach when someone fails, that's just the psychological friction of trying to exercise internal control over an external variable.
That's it, exactly.
It's a madness of trying to control someone else's free will.
That is the exact mechanism of burnout. Your mandate as a professional is not to force a result. Your mandate is fulfilled once you have provided a high-level, highly accessible environment.
Environment ownership. That's what the framework calls it, right?
Environment ownership, exactly.
Okay, the logic is sound. I own the environment, they own the result. But I have to represent the listener here who is commuting to work right now thinking, look, if I just step back and let my team fail, my boss is going to fire me. My principal is going to put me on a performance plan.
Right, the real world pressure.
Yeah, if I'm not hovering, if I'm not lecturing and driving the result, it feels like stepping back means I am doing less, which just feels like slacking off. How does this survive in a high-stakes, real-world environment where people demand results?
Well, that is the fear of the recovering hero talking, right? And it's a completely valid fear. But this is where we really need to look at the hard science of what actually generates results.
Okay.
Our sources highlight the landmark research by John Hattie. And for context, Hattie didn't just run some small study. He conducted a massive meta-analysis, synthesizing tens of thousands of studies involving millions of students.
Millions.
Millions. He was looking for what actually creates measurable growth.
And he measures this in something called an effect size, right? Where an effect size of 0.40 is considered roughly one standard year of growth.
Correct. So 0.40 is the baseline we are aiming for. Now, Hattie's data revealed that when an educator acts as an activator, someone who sets a clear goal, provides the environment, and then intentionally steps back to force the student to do the cognitive heavy lifting, the effect size jumps to 0.60 or higher.
Wait, really? 0.60, which is massive. That is a significantly accelerated rate of learning.
It gets better. Hattie also found that if you combine that stepping back with providing high-impact feedback while the student is struggling in that exploration phase, the effect size reaches 0.70.
Okay, so the data literally dismantles my guilt right there. Stepping back isn't doing less or slacking off. It is scientifically proven to be the most effective work you can possibly do.
Exactly.
My professional duty ends exactly where their autonomy begins, and the data proves that crossing that line actually hurts their growth.
Precisely. You're getting in the way.
But, okay, this naturally leads to a massive logistical problem. The data says stepping back works. But if I just step back, won't the person just drop the weight entirely?
Wow.
Like, how do I build an environment where my lack of constant heroic intervention doesn't just lead to an immediate disaster? Because if my gym is full of broken equipment and unclear instructions, I should feel guilty if you fail.
Right. You absolutely should.
So I need to know how to build an environment that is so foolproof I can actually defend my decision to step back.
You are looking for the practical application, the shield. And the framework calls this shield dignified differentiation.
Dignified differentiation.
Yes. This is the optimization of your environment to ensure that your mandate is irrefutably fulfilled. And the guiding philosophy here is brilliant in its simplicity. It's high thinking, low barrier.
High thinking, low barrier. How does that practically look in a room?
It starts with the universal concept, the big idea you are trying to teach or communicate. The intellectual rigor of that concept stays exactly the same for everyone. You never, ever water down the goal. However, you provide what the framework calls different doors, multiple access points to get into that concept. Specifically, you want to architect 3 distinct doors into every lesson or major project.
Okay, let's make this tangible. What are the 3 doors?
The first is the academic door. This is your traditional route. It involves primary sources, dense texts, complex articles, or, standard corporate reports.
Standard operating procedure.
Exactly. For the individuals who have the baseline skills and enjoy that traditional challenge, they walk right in. But then you must build the second door, which is the narrative door.
Okay, the narrative door.
This relies on story-based learning. You teach the exact same complex concept, but you do it through a case study, a historical narrative, or a compelling real-world anecdote.
Which makes sense because, human brains are literally hardwired to process information through narrative structures.
Exactly. We love stories. And finally, the third door is the visual door. This removes text almost entirely and relies on graphic maps, flowcharts, diagrams, or visual models of the concept.
Okay, I have to ask a vital clarifying question here, because I can hear the skeptics right now.
Let's hear it.
Does giving someone a visual door or a narrative door, instead of making them read the dense report, mean we are lowering our expectations? Are we just kind of dumbing down the material to guarantee they engage?
Not at all. And to understand why, we really have to look at the mechanics of cognitive load theory.
Okay.
Think of your brain's working memory like a computer's RAM. It has a strictly limited capacity. If you have a student who is dyslexic or an employee who struggles with dense jargon, forcing them through the academic door means they are spending like 90% of their cognitive RAM just trying to decode the words on the page.
Right, they're just fighting the friction of the medium itself.
Exactly. They have almost no processing power left for the actual high thinking, the analysis, the synthesis, the critical evaluation of the big idea.
That makes total sense.
By giving them a visual door, you are bypassing the decoding friction. You aren't lowering the intellectual bar. You are removing the artificial barrier to entry so they can grapple directly with the complex concept using their full cognitive capacity.
You aren't lowering the bar, you're just giving them a ramp instead of stairs.
Yeah.
The destination is exactly the same.
I love that analogy, yes.
And if I'm understanding the framework correctly, building these 3 doors is what creates the ultimate peace move for our own mental health.
Yes. The peace move is the activation of your guilt-free shield. Think about it. If you have done the deep professional work of providing 3 distinct, highly accessible doors to a concept, and a person looks at the academic door, looks at the narrative door, looks at the visual door, and chooses to walk through none of them, the responsibility for that failure squarely, undeniably resides with them.
Wow.
You have removed every reasonable barrier. Their refusal is no longer a reflection of your teaching. It is a clear exercise of their autonomy.
You can just feel the anxiety draining out of the room with that realization. My job isn't to force them through the door. My job is just to make sure the doors are unlocked and well lit.
Beautifully put.
But, okay, let's play devil's advocate here, because the real world is messy. Building these accessible doors requires empathy. You have to know what barriers your people are facing.
Sure.
But what happens when someone brings heavy, unavoidable, real-world baggage into the room? Like we're talking about severe trauma, food insecurity, or documented learning disabilities. Where does my empathy for their situation end and their responsibility begin?
This is often the hardest line for recovering heroes to draw. And it brings us to a concept called radical realism.
Radical realism.
It is the art of balancing profound, genuine empathy with firm professional boundaries. And the key to radical realism is understanding the crucial difference between being sensitive and being responsible.
Sensitive versus responsible. I feel like we usually use those interchangeably. How does the framework separate them?
So sensitivity acts as the scaffold. It means you look at those very real issues, the trauma, the hunger, the dyslexia, the overwhelming personal issues, and you acknowledge them with deep empathy.
Right.
Practically, this means providing the correct access point. If a student is dyslexic, sensitivity means you don't just hand them a dense textbook and walk away. You provide text-to-speech software. You point them toward the visual door. You scaffold the environment so they have a genuine opportunity to succeed despite their challenges.
Ignoring their reality under the guise of, like, tough love
Yeah,
isn't holding them to a high standard. It's just being completely oblivious.
exactly.
So that is sensitivity providing the scaffold. What is responsibility?
Responsibility is about the effort. And this is where radical realism draws an uncompromising line. Empathy does not mean absorbing the consequences of a person's chronic disengagement.
See, this is where the friction really hits. Like, I get it logically, but emotionally. It is. If I know someone is going through a terrible time at home, stepping back and letting them fail, letting them face the consequences, it feels cold. It goes against every nurturing instinct that drives someone into teaching or mentoring in the first place. It feels like a betrayal.
It feels that way to the hero ego, yes. But radical realism reframes this beautifully. It argues that true human dignity is honored by setting realistic goals, providing the necessary scaffolding, but demanding that the individual provides the effort to climb.
Yeah.
If you absorb their consequences, if you fudge a grade, if you cover for your employee's missed deadline, if you constantly make excuses for their lack of effort, you aren't saving them.
What am I doing then?
You are robbing them of their autonomy and their dignity. You are communicating in a very subtle, destructive way. I don't actually believe you are capable of overcoming this adversity, so I will do it for you.
Oof. That is a heavy realization.
It is.
Absorbing their consequences isn't kindness. It's a form of disrespect.
Yeah.
By letting them face the natural consequence of not walking through the door, even when they are struggling, you are respecting their ability to choose.
Exactly. You are honoring their agency even when they use that agency to make a poor choice. You cannot insulate someone from the reality of their own decisions without eventually crippling them.
Okay, so let's put this all together into the ultimate stress test.
Let's do it.
I have adopted the pedagogy of humility. I have built the perfect environment. I have my 3 doors of dignified differentiation, so there is no cognitive overload. I have applied radical realism. I am being deeply sensitive with my scaffolds, but holding the line on effort.
You've done the work.
I've done the work.
Yeah.
And yet, the person still disengages. They still put their head down on the desk. They still blow off the meeting.
It happens.
My instinct right in that moment is to write a long, emotional, desperate email to them or to their parents or to HR, just pleading with them to care. What is the exact tactical move to protect my peace when all else fails?
This is the final operational piece of the Zen Mountain framework. It's the inform and move on mantra.
Inform and move on.
Yes. It is designed to interrupt that exact emotional spiral you just described. It is a highly tactical 3-step process to ensure you do not slip back into the hero trap when faced with blatant apathy.
All right, break down the mantra for us. If I'm not writing an emotional email, what am I doing?
Step 1 is simply to document. In the system outlined in our sources, you mark an M for missed milestone on your weekly pulse sheet or, whatever tracking system you use.
Just a single letter. So it's completely objective data. There's no emotion, no narrative about why they failed, just a factual recording that they did not engage with the material.
Exactly. Keep the emotion out of the ledger. Step 2 is inform. This is where you communicate the situation, but you do it using a very specific, carefully worded template from the framework.
Okay, what's the template?
You're right. I have provided a dignified differentiation access point for this concept. The next step for mastery resides with, and then you insert the student or employee's name.
The next step for mastery resides with the student. Wow. It's almost clinical, but in the best way possible.
Yeah.
It's like a very polite, professionally documented return of serve in tennis. You've hit the ball back over the net. It was a good shot, perfectly placed right in their zone, and now the ball is definitively, undeniably in their court. You aren't going to jump over the net and swing their racket for them.
That is exactly the dynamic, and the psychological power of utilizing a written template really cannot be overstated. By writing those specific words down, you neutralize your own emotional bleed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You aren't writing a long, guilt-ridden paragraph that invites debate or excuses. You are explicitly stating that the environment was fully provided, which codifies your internal Zen Mountain mindset into a tangible, guilt-free administrative action. You have officially defined the boundary.
Which naturally leads to step 3.
Step 3 is move on. And this is the hardest part. You must mentally release the choice. You have provided the door. You have scaffolded the approach. You have documented the access. You are not responsible for their refusal to walk through it.
Wow.
You find your peace on the Zen mountain, and you redirect your finite energy toward the individuals who are actually walking through the doors, or you focus on refining those doors for tomorrow.
Document, inform, move on.
It sounds incredibly simple, but I know the emotional discipline required to actually execute that, to stand on that mountain and watch someone you care about choose to fail, is profound.
It is profoundly difficult.
But as we've explored today, the alternative isn't better. The alternative is burnout, exhaustion, and ultimately actively harming the cognitive independence of the people we are desperately trying to help.
It is a complete paradigm shift for anyone in a guiding role. You really must trade the illusion of control for the reality of influence. So, to synthesize this journey we've been on together for our listeners, we are moving away from the exhausting, burnout-inducing hero guilt trap, where we just tear ourselves apart trying to control the uncontrollable.
Right.
Instead, we are embracing the liberating Zen Mountain framework. We achieve this through environment ownership, recognizing that our internal locus of control is entirely about the space we build, not the result they achieve.
Exactly.
We build the three doors of dignified differentiation, academic, narrative, and visual, to ensure universal access without ever lowering the intellectual rigor. We practice radical realism by being sensitive enough to provide necessary scaffolds, but responsible enough to demand their effort.
You got it.
And finally, when the ball is in their court and they simply refuse to swing, we protect our peace with the tactical mantra: document, inform, and move on.
It is a masterclass in professional boundaries. And, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to mull over, one that takes these sources and expands them far beyond the classroom or the boardroom.
Okay, lay it on us.
If trying to control someone else's autonomy leads to role conflict and burnout in teaching or management, how much of our everyday exhaustion in our personal lives comes from this exact same trap?
Oh, man. That is a sobering thought.
Think about it. In parenting, in our friendships, in our romantic relationships, how much of our daily anxiety and resentment comes from trying to be the hero who does all the heavy emotional lifting for the people we care about?
Probably a lot more than we want to admit.
Right. What if, starting tomorrow, we all stopped exhausting ourselves trying to drag people across the threshold and instead just focused our energy on building different doors?
That is the ultimate question to ask yourself as you go about your day. Because at the end of the day, you can sweat and strain and push that massive boulder all the way to the top of the hill. But you absolutely cannot make the person sitting on top appreciate the view.
Exactly.
But you can build them a really great map, hand them a compass, and tell them you'll be waiting right there when they decide to start walking.
Find your peace on the mountain.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.